In this episode of the podcast, I sit down with Nicole S. Young, also known as Nicole Z. We have a deep discussion about how artificial intelligence is impacting her photography business. This is TWiP. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. My guest today is a good friend of mine, Nicole Z, also known as Nicole Young. NicoleZ.com is her website. We're going to do something a little bit different on this podcast or this particular show. There's been a lot of changes in the photography industry. I mean, all companies, I would argue, that touch photography at any level are being impacted by a variety of forces. One of the big ones that's on top of everyone's mind right now is artificial intelligence, AI, Adobe's generative fill, Midjourney, DALL-E, on and on and on, and how do that technology and other AI related machine learning based technologies, how do they impact the world of photography, like the art form itself, and then also the business of it. If you're a science nerd at all, and I've said this on the show before, if you're a science nerd at all, the whole I forget, what is it, the third law of thermodynamics? One of them. Somebody will correct me in the chat, but it's the law of the conservation of energy, right? Basically, energy cannot be destroyed or created. It can only be transformed into some other form, right? So I feel like that's what's happening in the photography industry. I don't know at what level right now, but I feel like that's happening, that all this raw material of stuff that we have, whether it's gear, software, training, all that, is about to be kind of thrown into the melting pot, and a different mold is going to be poured out from that. But Nicole and I were chit-chatting a little bit, and there's a number of industries that are affected, and she's one of the photographers, I think, that is affected. And I want to welcome her to the show. We're going to have a non-gear nerd type talk about the real deal of photography. Nicole, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be on. And it occurred to me as you were giving the intro, I kind of started my, I'm not like this big prolific photographer, but I especially I had a pretty substantial following on Twitter when it was early, kind of in its early when it was good. Mm-hmm. And the first podcast I was on when I was just starting with things was This Week in Photography. Woo. And that's where, yeah, right. That was like with, it was with the crew.
Yep.
The whole group. And you know what I'm talking about. And Alex Lindsay, Scott Bourne, and everyone. And it was like, I don't know, so nostalgic thinking about that. That was probably like 15 years ago, wasn't it? Oh my God.
That was. And
so anyway,
you remember that interview? You remember that interview we did at Starbucks in San Jose?
Yes, I do. That's on video. You can find that on YouTube if you look for it.
I'm going to embed it in the post for this.
No, that's okay. I don't mind. But I think it's interesting that I started. That was really my first ever podcast. I can remember being so nervous for that, and I was on my first podcast, and now I'm on this podcast again, This Week in Photography with you, and we're talking about the death of photography.
Yeah.
And it's just like, It's interesting. And I mean, we say it, the death of photography. And I'm sure that if that's a thing you can easily Google is AI killing photography and this and this and that. And that's what we're really going to kind of deep dive and talk about today. Mm-hmm. Because people who say yes, they're not 100% right. People who say no, they're not going to be 100% right. So there's a lot more to it than that.
It's deep. It's a broad, deep topic. And I feel like we're only at the beginning of this story right now. No one knows where it's going to, it's not going to end, but no one knows where it's going to meander to. There's so many open questions, from just, ethical questions to legal questions to, business model questions. It's all open, which is exciting on one hand, right? Because if you're older, you can see patterns in the chaos, right? This has happened before where, I don't know, take an industry that showed up in our lifetime. Yeah, stock photography.
Yeah, I was part of that. That I started actually making money with stock photography, and that's how I was able to break into photography. And then it's transitioned to writing books and, you know, having my own like education business. But stock photography, I can remember. Well, I mean, if we go further back, it was digital photography. You know, it was first it was digital, and then the stock photography, micro stock is what it then was, kind of a branch of that, or it was like it was part of the catalyst of, digital photography. Now it's more approachable and people can create photos and they can upload them to these sites and we can sell them for really cheap and people can make a lot selling more at smaller amounts, you know. And I can remember all of the controversy that came up with that, with the micro stock photography is killing the stock photography industry. And, you know, whereas now you could say the same thing for AI. Because stock photography still exists, still very oversaturated. I make very little for my stock sales because I just really contribute much to it anymore. It's still going to exist, but I mean, I use AI to create any kind of stock photo that I need for my marketing stuff. You know,
Why
it's
not?
like maybe a graphic that goes behind. Yeah, exactly. It's fun. It's easy. I'm already paying for it. So
yeah, right now, you know, I didn't forget, but I had. Maybe I did forget, but that you were so involved in the stock. Some of the early interviews I did with you were around your experiences with iStock Photo and all.
The one that you mentioned, probably that's what I talk about. Was probably photography.
That whole world, and it's interesting. Can you paint the picture of kind of that? You know, the evolution of man, or in this case, the de-evolution of man, you know, with the you know, the different forms of man, the different shades of the evolution of the stock business, right? So, because it went from way back in the day, it was, hey, if you get in with Getty or whatever and get a set of images there, those images will sell for hundreds of dollars each, and you could make a living on just being a stock photographer. Give yourself assignments or let someone else give you assignments, go out, shoot. Keep feeding the library, you make money, everybody's happy from licenses. That went away quickly, right? Mm-hmm.
I never was part of that, so I don't even know I never got involved with that. I remember hearing about it because I got into photography in the mid to late 90s when I was in high school. And so it was still film. So I learned on film. I worked in a photo lab. You know, I worked in a film photo studio where I did retouching with whatever version of Photoshop was, you know, in 97. So I got to at very early stages of that. I always remember thinking in my head that it was like, you know, photographers would send in all these like catalogs of all these slides, you know, because you'd shoot in slide. You wouldn't shoot probably in like classic 35 millimeter film, you know, you'd be slide film or whatever. And then they'd submit them. And I didn't know, I had no idea. But then it was, you can sign up for, there's a bunch of them like there are now, but iStock was the one. I signed up for a bunch of different at first. I think I found out about it through a popular photography magazine. Mm-hmm. And that really that was like, that was my pivot. You know, I was in the military when I discovered stock photography, and I was at the time kind of planning on staying in the military for some time. But I loved photography and I wanted to get better at photography. And so I started doing stock photography. I just discovered it. I was like, oh, this is cool. This will kind of give me a good focus, you know, like something to really kind of literally shoot for. So I started growing my portfolio, and then it just kind of, you know, took off. I started making good money, and I was like, I'm gonna get out of the military. I got out of the military, and then, you know, the rest is history. But then let's kind of work from that. You know, it started with film, and then it kind of moved to this micro stock, and then it started to get really oversaturated. And then you have sites like Stocksy, which is one of the sites. It's the main site I contribute is kind of, you know, a finger quote around the word because I'm not really active with it. I do have a good portfolio there and see a little bit come through, but they call themselves more sustainable stock, where it's like kind of a co-op, you know, with like real imagery, real people, and it's not the cheesy stock that you see on a lot of other sites, you know. But still, like now AI is disrupting everything, and so. It's, like Adobe accepts AI imagery. Why would somebody get, you know, in my head, of course, I'm really involved with the AI stuff and using Midjourney. So I'm like, why would I just buy someone else's AI photo unless it's just perfect and it has everything I need on it when I could just play around and create my own, you know? So It's like, where's that?
Not only that, Yeah, I've had the exact same sort of dialogue in my head that you're having, like, why not do this when you can do that? But even if you generate an image with Midjourney, or a service like that, now with Photoshop and generative AI, right, or generative AI fill, if it's not perfect, you can remove whatever's not perfect and change it to perfect, and never have taken a physical photograph and end up with a photorealistic, perfect image of what you need for the project, right?
It blows me away. It was so much where I had to take my boyfriend, Jason, and I was like, Jason, you have to see this Photoshop thing. Because, we're very, I'll share with him a lot of things, but I was like, no, seriously. It was like late at night. And I was like, I have to take you to my office and show you this. It's crazy. And I took a picture that we went to Thailand in December last year. I took a picture, and it's a really nice picture of like these elephants amidst these trees and kind of the jungle. And I selected I expanded the canvas, and then I selected the picture, inversed it, like, if you've seen any of the tutorials, you probably know what I'm talking about. It, and it just was like, when I look at one of my photos using generative fill, and it fills everything in perfectly to where I'm like, I can't even tell. I could not even tell that I didn't photograph that because it was so beautifully done. Now, it does have some room for improvement. Faces are not very good yet.
Hands.
I tried hands. Yeah. I tried to take some pictures of me and my ex and take him out of it because I was like, I have all these beautiful pictures of me. Like we went to Iceland years ago, and I was like, why didn't I just take some pictures of just myself? Because I have these really great photos where I set up the tripod and I got these pictures. And I'm like, I should have just done a couple with just me. I have none of just me. So I was like, maybe I use Photoshop now and it'll just do it really quickly. And it tried to swap him with like a weird other people. It was doing some really weird things. So it's not perfect, but when you're trying to work with landscapes, especially landscapes, I find that landscapes work really, really well. It's more realistic, I should say, other things are too, but it's like, it is just like, it blows my mind what you can do with it. And it's going to be incredible. I mean, a year from now, things are moving exponentially at this point. A year ago, I think it was only a year ago that like Midjourney and some of the big AI things just started coming out, and look where we are now to what we can create. These photorealistic images that are just absolutely incredible. People are creating jobs from
what other industries though. So that decimated like Midjourney or for whatever forces in the market, microstock, etc. So they could take them off the table for the most part, right? Yeah. So with AI is kind of like the final nail in the coffin. Like, why would I spend $1,000 to license that when I can just describe it and get my own, right? And
which is its own art form in itself.
Yeah, prompting.
Some people are going to be better at it than others, but it's
But what else though, right? So there's
ChatGPT maybe, like copywriting.
Right.
I mean, I don't pay for a copywriter. Mm-hmm. I write my own things, but it's like one of the things that I mentioned to you. I've started to play around with AI imagery in other ways outside of photography. With creating activity books and having fun.
Let's talk about that. Let's jump to that. Yeah.
So
that's your Figgy Design site, right?
Figgy Design. So I have this. I live out in the country now, and I have an acre and a half, and I have a fig tree, and it's a funny, wonky little tree, but it produces so many figs, and I make I've been canning. I do also. I'm like a country girl now, so. I was like, Figgy Designs. That's kind of a cute name, I'll do Figgy Design. So I started making coloring books using AI. I've also started kind of branching out to doing like word search puzzles, activity books. I one of the things that I've always thought was what's the word I'm looking for? Like competitively with other photographers who do what I do. I really enjoy creating books. I love creating books and publishing and, print books, ebooks, whatever. Whereas a lot of people do video content. And while I do some video content, I don't enjoy it as much as I do the publishing side of things and the, creating books. So I always thought that was like, that was like a fault of mine, is like, I need to do more video because they sell for more money and I can't make as much with books. But now I'm realizing all of that has kind of maybe led me to doing this other kind of side business that I have going on where I'm actually creating books, and they're all on Amazon, so I publish them the coloring book or whatever. I put it on Amazon and people buy the print copy of it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I'm having a lot of fun with that. But, things like ChatGPT are extremely helpful when I'm like, okay, I created a coloring book with witches. I just did like a Halloween one, right? So I was like, these beautiful grayscale witches, and it has this many, da, da, da. I give it a few things that it needs. And then I'm like, give me a description. And it gives me a big old description of it. I, of course, have to go and I make changes to it. I edit it. But that's a copywriter's job. And I would do it on my own. I'm not taking out someone's job away from them because I'm not going to pay somebody to write that stuff for me. But it's just going to do a better job than what I could do.
It lets you do more. It lets you do more than you normally could. Yeah. And writing, I was writing an email for a friend yesterday, and the copy for that email would have been, I don't know. We were kind of debating back and forth. With ChatGPT writing it, it was great. Probably more professional than I could ever have written. But if I had written it, it would have been more me, grammatical errors and all, which may have made it more personable.
Does ChatGPT know who you are?
It does. It actually does.
I can, So, because I was actually with Photo Joseph, I helped promote, push one of his workshops through my email list, and he's like, "Oh, well, here's some copy you can use, and look, I just used ChatGPT to write it in your style." And I was like, "ChatGPT knows who I am." So
I never tried that.
I have to try this now. Yeah. So I asked ChatGPT first. I prompt it with saying, "Hey, do you know who Nicole S. Young is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a photographer, this and that and that, right?" It's just pulling stuff probably off my website. But I have written a ton of blog posts, and I don't know if it can find PDFs with ebook content, get my writing style. But I can say things like, okay, write this in my writing style, in Nicole S. Young's writing style. And it's obvious it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to do a pretty good job of getting me to a place where I just need to make a few edits.
What kind of things define your What kind of things define your writing style? What's a nuance that you'd be like, oh yeah, I would have said that?
I write very much like I talk. I don't use big, fancy, multiple syllable words. So I don't know though. I'd have to try it again because
I'm curious. I'm definitely gonna try that because I know you can get ChatGPT with or ChatGPT 4 with the plugins can interface with YouTube, right? So you can ask it questions about a YouTube video. Hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos up there with transcripts. So I wonder if the AI could create a further. Yeah,
that's a good point. Because if you're talking, it's going to know better than just if you're writing. Because I still write a little bit differently when I talk. And then when I write books, I have an editor, but it's still me. So it's like I'm still so blown away, and it's fun to see all of this AI. We're seeing a change. We're seeing the shift. And I'm the kind of person who I'm not going to cling to what I had. I have to move with the tide. Otherwise I'll drown, and I'm not going to drown. I'm going to adapt or die. It's that kind of thing, but it's also, I think you even said the word pivoting. My photography business is not dead. I know it's going to change. And that's probably the best I can do right now. I know things are going to change. I'm always going to be a photographer. I will always create photographs. Whether or not it's, I'm going to teach as long as I do, I don't know. I'm not sure. My life may change. Things might be different. And the Figgy Designs books that I'm making, those are I really enjoy doing them. That's probably one of the biggest things for me is I really enjoy doing it. Some could argue that I'm taking away other people's jobs, illustrators. I know that there are probably people who are really into coloring books who might have a problem with AI generated coloring books. And if you do, then don't buy my stuff, but if you don't, I don't just create 30 pictures and just slap them in a book. I curate, I Photoshop if I need to. I look for funny things like 6 fingers on a hand. I make sure that they're still good because there's still design and craft involved with doing this. There are a ton of crappy books out there. If you were to go on Amazon and you're trying to find a coloring book, there's a bunch of stuff now. It's getting over flooded. It's going to, but the things will always rise to the top. And so I'm just taking the skills that I've created and learned on my own over the past 15 plus years. A lot of it is design. I think I'm just lucky in the fact that it's something that I enjoy and that I'm at. And so I'm kind of working with that and trying to find a way to survive in this like sea change, of everything with AI.
And that's the thing, isn't it? The mindset, I think you've already won with that mindset, because the people that lose, in my opinion, not that I'm some sage or anything, but I think the people that lose are the ones that are going to make the statement. And this has happened in history over and over. People that make the statement, you know what, I've done it this way for 50 years. I'm not switching to this thing over there. That's not even, poo-pooing the new thing, because they've got so much of their lifetime and, blood, sweat, and tears invested in the old way. Switching to the new way seems scary, right? And I got to relearn all this stuff. And the playing field is now somebody could just type a sentence and do what it took me 7 years to figure out.
God.
Right?
I mean, I thought that digital photography right now, before AI, was like amazing. I'd see people. I knew somebody a couple of years ago. I went through a coding class in 2019, and I met this guy, Matt, and he's an amazing photographer. And he'd only had a camera for, I don't even think, a year. And he was creating these amazing pictures. And I just always thought, that's so cool. It's crazy. You can pick up a camera, learn from YouTube, and just create these beautiful photos. And now you don't even need a camera.
Yeah,
but like,
you don't.
With what you were saying, people who are just like so stubborn with, I'm going to keep doing it this way. That it reminds me of, kind of not really on the AI path, but parallel to the photography discussion of like photography dying or whatever. Instagram. If anyone's noticed, maybe they haven't. I have not really been on social media much in the past, probably 6 months or so. I kind of felt like I needed to step away from it, and I don't know if it's going to be permanent or if all my accounts are still active. I'm not going to like delete anything, but I just felt kind of like, for my own mental health and my own sanity, I just needed to step away from it, because it felt like I constantly had to create things that weren't necessarily me or from me, like Instagram, for example. If you want to build a following, I don't want people to think that when I'm saying all this that you can't still create and post, because I'm still going to create photos, and most of them are just going to sit on my computer because I love to create photos. It's not because I need to share them with everyone. It's because I love to do it. And the same thing can be with all of the social media sites out there, all the community sites out there. But for people who want to monetize or grow their following or become influencers, it's going to be difficult if you are still in the mindset of being a still photographer, because things are moving towards video, shorts, TikTok. And you have to, if you want to, let's say I was like, I really want to be big on Instagram, but I don't want to do video, and I don't want to do shorts, and I don't want to do stories. Well, you're not probably going to do very well on Instagram.
Correct.
Because it's not where Instagram is going. So you have to decide, do I want to do well on Instagram and maybe go against the grain for what I want to do? Or do you want to do what you want to do and find the road and the path that's going to take you into that direction? And that's what I'm doing. I'm going, okay, well, I love photography. I'm still going to do it, and I'm still going to create things, and you'll still see me on my website. You'll still get my emails. I'll still have my community, but I'm going to do this other thing, because this other thing, I'm going to kind of fill in the gaps with what I can't do with my photography business, with my book stuff, with my activity books, because I enjoy it. It's fun, and it is making me money. And that's kind of always going to be the bottom line when it comes to business, is it's a business. I can't keep doing this if I'm not going to make any income from it, because then I will die. We have to earn a living with it if we're going to, obviously a lot of people are doing photography and they're not making money from it, and that's fine. Yeah. And that might be me one day too. But, I can't just not make money, because I have to pay my bills and I have to pay my mortgage. And
it's called living,
it's
right?
a reality. It is a reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And that pivot thing, I don't know, pivot, like as an industry, like you might argue that, the whole photography industry, all photographers everywhere need to pivot in this new direction. I think it's I don't know, this is more nuanced than that. I think it's more of the photographers need to, even the word photography, right? It's myopic, and it is, I do this, and photography represents a two-dimensional image, composed with the rule of thirds and this and that and the color harmony and the symmetry, and I end up with an image that I can put somewhere in the physical world or share online. When the reality is, I think because of where tools are going and where these consumption devices, how ubiquitous they are, we become more just creators, right? Or, I used to say back in the day, multimediagraphers. I was preaching that. I've been preaching that for a decade. The whole
more true now than it has ever been.
Yeah, right. You're not just a photographer. You can create audio. You can create experiences now. With Apple and their thing, the Vision headset thing, you'll be able to create entire experiences to tell the story versus trying to get it in one frame or even linearly with video. So, yeah, to pigeonhole yourself. And not, it sounds negative, but, you can specialize, of course. But I think to limit yourself, maybe that's a better phrase, to limit yourself and not pay attention to all these other technologies, whether it's AI in all of its forms, generative and language models, etc., or even the VR stuff or the 360 stuff or just audio. What could you do there? Or like I'm creating books. It's media. It's multimediography. You're still a creator. You're making cool stuff and sharing it with people. One of the things you do, one of the little cool tools in your utility belt is photography now, right? So,
it's funny you saying that, and I'd be like, now it's almost like when people ask, what do I do? I'd be like, I'm a creator.
Yeah.
I'm a publisher. I'm a photographer. I'm a designer. I'm a web builder. I do all of these things. And it's just when you have your own business and you have I know a lot of people pay other people to do things, and there's nothing wrong with that. I always wish that I could do that. And it's not because I couldn't afford it. It's because I didn't want to hand over the control. And in a way, I'm glad I didn't, because now I have all of these skills on my belt for all the things I need to do. But ultimately, you know what I want? I want to slow my life down. And it's funny because I say that, and it's almost against what is almost happening with everything. Everything's getting faster, and it's getting easier, and it's getting crazier. And I'm like, I live out in the country now. We got some chickens, we got some ducks. I'm starting to garden, and we, I want to have a more fulfilling home life where I can spend half my day making content, making books, doing photography stuff, whatever. And then the other half, I can be out in my garden. I could be cleaning my house. I could be cooking dinner. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. Maybe I'm going through a midlife crisis. I don't know. I'm
just evolution. I think it's just you're a talented human being that knows how to do stuff and has a passion. To where you focus that is the choice that you need to make, I think, right? Because you're not going to go sit on the couch and start watching soap operas all day, whatever. You have to funnel your energy into something. And it goes back to like Tim Ferriss back in the day with 4-Hour Workweek when he was talking about lifestyle design, right? That's what you're doing. You're like, okay, the way that I designed that version of my life no longer suits me. I need to redesign it into something that, keeps me enthusiastic about getting up every day. And that is the A, B, and C now. Right. So I don't think it has to do with aging. Maybe it does a little bit, and just being more experienced and easier to get frustrated, I think.
Yeah, maybe. We can see what things were, and everyone has their nostalgia, and but I also embrace things, and I embrace change, because if I don't, then I'll just be grumpy and bitter. And that's not me in general. I'm a very happy person. But I know I've been kind of talking a little bit about like what my side of things are with AI and how I'm kind of navigating it. But I'm curious, like, what do here, I feel like I'm the host now. What do you think about things like people doing different types of photography because my business was never, when I did stock photography, I was making money directly through my photography sales. But it transitioned into where I was making money through my books, my video courses, my presets, my textures, and all of those things. I've never really had a formal photography business where I had clients and, or had sponsors that had me go out and do things. But how do you think that's going to change with people who do landscape photography or weddings or portraits, or is it in some cases? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, good question. I think it is going to change. And I think, some industries or genres faster than others. But I think you'll start seeing people, you got to skate to where the puck is going to be. Right. And it's a capitalistic kind of economy that we live in, where there's competitive forces at play. They're going to force you as a provider of a service to keep up with what everyone else is doing. When everyone else starts saying, say for example with senior portraits, the whole idea of, okay, you could do a standard senior portrait session and give them all the things and the prints, and you're progressive because you're going to give them web version sized images as well, right? Or do you pivot into where things are going and say, as part of this package, I've taken a bunch of your images and had the AI generate 100 different variants of you, right? Doing these different things as part of the overall package. Yeah. Or whatever. Yeah. Just these things. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say there's, I want to say, because of the pace that things used to go, normally it'd be like, in 5 years, things might change to something else. And then another 5 years. No, in 6 months, things are going to change. We're going to get there. Like right now, you can't really take. So I use Midjourney. That's like the AI of, generative AI that I like to use for creating images. Yeah. And right now you can't really take, it might be by design, because they don't really want to have like fake images and, going down dirty paths with that of somebody's face and on a different type of body, for example. But I feel like there is going to be some type of use for that. That is going to be legitimate use, maybe Photoshop. I'm not sure where you can do that. You can say, okay, crap, we didn't get that picture of us in front of the Eiffel Tower. So let's take this other picture and just like tell it to make us look exactly like we're standing in front of it. And we're not just a bad Photoshop job in front of it. So, or a wedding picture, like get a few pictures. I mean, but see, I think that's where my old brain wants to say, well, weddings, I don't know. Wedding photography may survive. I don't want photography to die. It's hard to see this. There's almost like this mourning process that I feel like I'm going through, like seeing things change while also seeing, like other things becoming new. And that's kind of part of the like mental thing you have to do to actually like feel okay with all of this. But I mean, if somebody's going to get married, you want to photograph and capture those memories. You don't want them to be fabricated unless it's like fixing a wardrobe malfunction or something, or you didn't want Uncle Joe in the picture because he's whatever, so you get him out of the picture. But you could do that in Photoshop before anyways. It's just going to be a lot easier with AI. But, I feel like there are going to be some like event type photography those things are probably still going to survive. But like standard portraits, like you said, it might just be, okay, we'll come in for your headshot. They have a very easy, simple headshot. And then maybe a body shot, so you're still representing the true person and you're not just slapping them on someone else's body. Maybe some people would want that, but if you actually want to document that person, and then you just go from there. And then you just, like you said, here's all the different AI things that it generated. Which one do you want? At what point though, does that become like, oh no, it just looks like everybody else, like the face tuning,
yeah, that's the challenge.
People who they face tune themselves and they just look like all the women look like the exact same women because they're all face tuning themselves the exact same way.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting that as we record this, it's June 6th, 2023. Yesterday, Apple announced that headset, which I'm sure, if you're watching this years from now, it's probably taken over the world by now or something. But one of the features, did you notice one of the features in there was a camera? Oh, it has, and they kind of put it in there mid-sentence. We've developed the world's first, I don't know if they said world's first or our first or industry's first, 3D camera. So with the headset on, you can click a button and it will take a picture of the scene in 3 dimensions so that you can later play back that scene in video or stills and look around.
It's like Minority Report.
Yeah, exactly like Minority Report. So I saw that and I'm thinking that is a new paintbrush for photographers to be able to tell stories with and train other people on how to do creative things with and all the things. So I'm thinking, as I look at that kind of stuff, the photographers that may get left behind are the ones that look at that and like, that's not real photography. Real photography, you're in a dark room with a safe light and you're dipping and dunking and doing all that stuff. Those people, more power to them, but train's going to leave the station and you're going to be like, oh, if only I had gotten involved in 2023, I'd be sitting pretty right now. Right. So that's thing. But, I think it's a matter of keeping your mind open for this kind of stuff. The whole cliche of lifelong learner, right? Which is true. You can't atrophy, because your atrophy is like a shark stopping, swimming. Yep. You're done at that point. Hang it up. But it's crazy. One of the things I wanted to throw at you is, when you look at the photographers that are coming up today, you're an educator, so you're one of the perfect people to ask this question to. The photographers are coming up today, and let's call it in the old days, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in the old days, it was, and still is, but in the old days, it was f-stops, shutter speed, ISO, composition, color harmony in the image, symmetry, asymmetry to make an interesting photo, retouching, posing people if you're doing that. The fundamentals of photography, genre dependent, were always kind of rock solid. This is the basics of how you do stuff. I feel like that's gone for the most part, or at least radically altered or more flexible now because of the tools we have. If you crop somebody and the picture would have been better if you had positioned them at the rule of thirds, you can extend the side of the frame out on the side to make a more interesting photo, removing the need to have been a good enough photographer to catch it on the frame, right? So as an educator, how would you advise people that are wanting to get in, they want to be a photographer or they want to be a multimediographer or whatever. How do they start? Somebody's brand new. They're just like, I see this industry. I could see, it's in the middle of some sort of transition, but I still have stories to tell and I want to do this. What should I do, Nicole?
Well, there are definitely still people who want to be photographers. It's not like, I don't know, like oil painters, everybody in the, 1700s, maybe being an oil painter was like, that was being an artist, and not that obviously people still want to be painters too, but there definitely are people who want to get good at photography. When I started this and when you started this, it was 2008, 2009. And digital was still very new. It was, I can remember going through, I took some, I was like, I just got out of the military, and so I was in California, and I was like, I'll take some just community college classes, because I still considered myself like, I was still learning photography. I knew photography, but I wanted to learn more. And so I took some like community college classes. I took like a semester or a quarter or whatever on photography. And there was one class I went to, and I had to get permission from the instructor. Like, she had to give me special, it was her class, so she just chose, but she basically had to decide whether or not it was okay for me to use my digital camera, because I was the only person in that entire class that was using digital. Now, it was Monterey, California, so, I don't know if that makes any difference, but it was, not like the heart of Silicon Valley or anything like that. It was really close, but it was still like, I was like, seriously, what's wrong with digital? And I kind of felt like this snooty kind of vibe from some of the people. And there was one student who was basically saying, I'm going to be a photojournalist, but I'm never going to use digital. And I'm like, good luck with that. I could see that even. You can't. Are there photojournalists anymore? There's another industry that has changed a lot too. Obviously there are, but there's fewer of them. But as for somebody who wants to get started with this, it's hard to say, because I'm not, if I was half my age, I might have a better perspective. There's people who are going to have a much easier time learning all of this, first of all, because of everything, because of things that you and I have created, because of things that everyone else who's taught photography or is on TikTok sharing photo tips, or is there, and you don't have to pay for it anymore. You pay by being the product, by watching advertisements, or maybe paying YouTube $10 a month. And that's where I see in regards to education is, I think, slowly going to kind of just kind of whittle away, because you can get so much information out there for very little. And if you want more than that, then you pay more for that. You pay one-on-one, you go on workshops, you do those types of things. I don't know. It's really, really hard to say, because there's just so much out there, and things move so fast that you can learn in a week the things that it took me 5 years to learn how to do, when I was just starting. And I don't even feel like I'm exaggerating when I say that. Like, I truly feel that, because there's so many good photographs out there. And I mean, this is kind of an aside, and I kind of just thought of this and somehow it sparked in my head, but I was trying to create so sometimes I've just recently started using AI to create example images for, like, if I'm teaching like Luminar. So I have like a Luminar book that I just released. And so every once in a while I'd be like, I could probably create, because I'm not teaching photography in this book, I'm teaching the software. So I was like, I have no problem creating AI images for some of the things that I want to show if it's going to be a really good representation on how to use this software. So I would create a few things here and there. And one of the tools that Luminar Neo has is a background, like a bokeh filter for portraits. It was so hard to get, and I don't even think I did a very good job with it, to get Midjourney to create a photo, portrait picture without a blurry background, because that's what everybody, they strive for that. I can remember being a very new photographer or helping people who were new photographers and using SLRs, digital SLRs, where before we had the live preview and the instant feedback on our cameras. How do I get a blurry photo? It looks blurry when I look through the camera because it's stopping it. It's all the way open. Your lens is all the way open, and then you click that shutter, it stops all the way down to f11, and everything's in focus. How do I get it blurry? So then it's hard to teach somebody if they can't see it in their head, if they don't have the experience. But now you don't need to see it in your head because you can see it right away, or you can prompt it on AI and see it right away, and then quickly go, oh, I understand the difference between a shallow depth of field and a narrow depth of field, or a wide depth of field, and it's it's just so much easier to learn. And if you want to learn 100%. Something, you can learn it. And that's like, I don't even know where to tell people to start. I'd be like, I don't know, Google it. You want to learn how to. That's what I do. I think it's kind of silly when I sometimes I'll get questions from people, or I'll just like, I'll go and I'll see something on Reddit, because I scroll Reddit. That's probably the one social media that I like to use. I just scroll it and see what all the ridiculous things are. But people ask questions and I'm like, you could have just Googled it. That's always I don't write that, but in my head, I'm like, why didn't you just Google it? In the time
you ranted this, you could have Googled it, right?
I know. I mean, I'm the kind of person where if I'm contacting like support for something, it's because I have exhausted everything that I possibly could have done to figure it out on my own. And that's probably why I am good at so many things, because I just sit down and go, oh, I'm going to let me figure out how to do this. Oh, I figured it out. Hey, I just learned something new in the process. I didn't even know that. So
that's the key right there. Yeah. Same here. I'm a project-based learner, right? So like when I was building the TWiP website, I had to figure out WordPress and how all that worked and the problems and the pluses and the, all the things. But now I understand it. So now I understand WordPress, but it wasn't like, you know what? I should probably learn WordPress one day and then go buy a bunch of WordPress 101 books and try to internalize it. It has to be something that's real. For me, it has to be something that's real and that has either a self-imposed deadline or a real deadline that I'm marching to. I got to get all this done.
You just answered the question. If you want to learn how to do something, then create a project for yourself, and then figure out all of the things you need for that project. Like if you want to learn InDesign, tell yourself you're going to make a book and you're going to use InDesign, and gosh darn it, you're going to learn how to use InDesign. I've been using InDesign for over a decade with my photography books, and I've been using it also for my KDP. It's all, the Figgy Designs, the books, the activity books. I publish them through Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon, so that's KDP. I use InDesign for all of that, and I have learned out of necessity how to do things because I've been creating, a couple dozen books or whatever in the past 6 months. And that's how I've learned things, is like going, oh man, if only I knew this when I was doing it with my photography stuff, because I'm just making so many more of them. But that's your answer. Give yourself a task or a project with a deadline, tell people about it, make sure that there is accountability, and do it. And you will learn how to do something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I predict one of the next things that you're going to do is create a book on how to manage KDP and build digital books with the whole workflow of Midjourney and ChatGPT and all that.
It's, that's not a bad idea, but I kind of just want to be the person doing the things, for so long and I still am, but for so long I've been teaching, and it's like, I want to transition to a different type of thing, where I can go, oh, I'm going to sit down for 2 hours today and push out this book I've been working on, or start a book from start to finish. And sometimes it's that easy to do depending on what I'm making. And then not have to check my emails and, not have to just see how much money I've made for the day and go, oh, okay, now I can go water my plants.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah. Again, lifestyle design, right? You want to design the lifestyle that fits the current you versus an older you or a hypothetical future you. What do you think? Back to the photography industry and it's, long live photography, or photography is dead, long live photography.
Long live AI.
Long live AI. So the kind of businesses, blue sky, right? The kind of businesses you think AI will enable, or kind of like we talked about the industry, like stock photography that AI likely is eating and picking its teeth with right now. Or if you look, here's another example is drones. So drones or the commercialization of consumer drones, rather, where, they have the technology. A lot of it came from the advent of the iPhone. I'm looking at my iPhone right here. So, but from the advent of the iPhone, like the accelerometer and digital compass and altimeter and all that stuff on a chip that was miniaturized and made en masse. So now another industry can start using those and build things that weren't even previously conceived of before. Now they can do it. So I'm wondering, what is the drone moment, for this, I don't know, the creative industry? Like, what kind of businesses are we going to see show up? Uber, for example, Uber, Lyft, all those guys. No one thought about that business model before iPhone showed up. It was all cabs or buses or whatever, right? And now we have a brand new way of getting that changed the world, right? A brand new way of getting around that people can use. What do you think? Something brand new that AI might enable? And maybe you don't want to tell me because it might be $1 billion idea that we're telling.
If I had one, I wouldn't. I might tell you, but I wouldn't tell everyone because it would be the next Uber, Lyft, or whatever.
That's right.
That's what's exciting about this is that we have no idea. Like, here's what I want. I want a holodeck. I want Star Trek technology. I want a replicator. Like, how far away is that? Is that even possible? We can 3D print. Can we 3D print? Can I go and 3D print a pizza? Can I plug in the Pizza Hut or whatever I don't even think I've had Pizza Hut in years, but plug in whatever you want and then it makes it for you and it tastes exactly like it. That's what I want. Now, I mean, we're many, many, many years, if even in our lifetime. But with the with the Apple thing, that could be the start of, holodeck type. I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to touch and feel, at least you're not going to be able to touch and feel what, I don't know. I don't really know the full extent of what the Apple thing can do, but it sounds like you might be able to create a room where you can walk around and just see things, and walk through and maybe get like birds chirping because you're walking through the forest and it looks like you're walking through the forest. You can't touch and feel things. It doesn't smell like anything. But I tell you what, I watched Star Trek. We're going through this Star Trek: The Next Generation, getting through the whole series because Jason's never seen all of it. So I was like, let's watch all of the Star Treks. I know, right? Nice. He's getting there. He loves it. And so it's like he comes home from work. I make dinner. We sit down and what's the next episode? So we're watching Star Trek. And with AI and using Midjourney and all of these things, it really changes my perspective on some of the things. Like when they walk up to the holodeck, and this is super nerdy. For those who haven't seen Star Trek, I'm sorry. But you walk up to the holodeck and you say, I want to go to a really cool, beautiful waterfall scene, with birds chirping, make it. And then they don't give any more than that. They just say give me a beautiful scene of a waterfall. And they walk in and it's gorgeous. And I'm like, that's prompting, I could do the exact same thing. It's just a still photo and it's still filling in the gaps. But then they stand there and they go, no, I don't want those flowers. I want these flowers. So they change, the computer changes them, or, I want this. No, I don't want that kind of music playing in the background. I want this. So they change it. And it's exactly the same. And it's so crazy. And how innovative the creators were who made this stuff. And I don't know if maybe is life imitating art in this? Do we see what people have come up with as, as science fiction, and then slowly we're moving towards that? Or was it just inevitable and they just could see it that far behind?
Or both. Are science fiction writers prolific and they can imagine things that are probably going to be, that's the science and the fiction. Yeah, I remember the same thing. Remember the Star Trek of the 70s? I remember for the folks that aren't Trekkies, the original Star Trek with William Shatner as Captain Kirk in there. But remember the pads they had back then? They had the little pads that the captain would, Yeah, well, they had communicators, or maybe it was Next Generation. They had pads, but they had communicators.
They have pads in the Next Generation, and they have to hand them around. And I'm like, they don't have the cloud yet. They haven't even thought of the cloud yet. Everything would be in the cloud, or like
that's for security. The board can hack that.
Yeah, right. Like there was an episode where they were handing around these little like chips they were like these little, like they look like little USB drives, and they had music on them, and I'm like, that's the cloud. Why don't they just use they didn't know. This was the 90s, it didn't even exist in their mind yet. They thought pretty far in advance, with pads and, the computers and everything. But it's funny because we'll watch an episode and be like, why didn't they have a backup of their computer when this alien took over? They would have been fine if you just had hard copies. I just totally overanalyze it, and I'm such a geek. But but it's still they're very it's fun seeing that, and then seeing what we have now and how it's actually kind of slowly moving. Well, it's moving towards that to some extent. I don't know if we're ever going to get to like a what's it called, the post-scarcity society, which I know that Midjourney is all about that. That's one of the things I like about them, just because of their the way that they think, the culture that they kind of embrace with community and creation and stuff. Like that's one of the things I like about them. I do use it commercially, and they're not. It's fine to do it that way, if you pay for it. But I do like the way that they kind of approach that. But anyways, I'm kind of going on another tangent there.
I don't know. I just wonder. Yeah, I wonder. Like, there's so much like forward-looking. I guess that's the point of this whole episode is it's a wide open field right now. The hyperbole of is photography dead? No, like I said, conservation of energy. It's not dying. It's morphing into something different. And can you be Nostradamus and skate to where the puck is going to be? I think of nerding out, no inside information at all here, and just me kind of guessing and building my own science fiction hypotheses in my head. But I think of Apple, multi-trillion-dollar company, right? And they make their own chips, by the way, and they have a built-in ecosystem for selling digital assets, whether it be songs, movies, ebooks, whatever. They already have that infrastructure that they've been banging on for years, and it's pretty much bulletproof now. So they have that in place. They've been gathering data with the iPhones and understanding how optics work with computational photography and using LiDAR for depth mapping, all that stuff. So they have this capability in one place. And then I look at the photography industry, and I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if, like Marvel's What if Apple bought a company like Nikon for their glass works, right? So now they have a bunch of really good glass, and then this is fiction here, by the way. Then they found some money in the couch cushions and bought Adobe. So now they have instant street cred in AI and with all creators right out there. So they own all that space. And then they say, you know what? We're going to disrupt photography. We're going to build a device that kind of looks like these goggles, but it's going to be a advanced amateur / professional photography. Maybe we won't call it a camera. It's a thing that allows you to capture media in 3D and 2D and audio and, capture the world around you. And it goes up to the cloud. And it does this computational photography stuff. And it's awesome. And by the way, you can put Nikon glass on if you need to, or whomever, or mounts for your particular or adapters. Yeah. What if an Apple did that and just came in and made our little point and shoot, beautiful cameras or mirrorless cameras instantly antiquated overnight? Right.
As long as they don't make me embed it like into my brain, then I might use it.
Neuralink. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, that whole world is just crazy to me. So what's missing from the space right now from an education standpoint? Because it seems very sparse. I see some people putting out courses here and there, like I think our mutual friend Colin Smith down in Southern California, he just put out a course on generative fill in Adobe and Firefly and all that. So and he runs Photoshop Cafe, so obviously he's got to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, when are we going to start seeing a mass of training come in? Like, power user ChatGPT, or ChatGPT for copywriters, or, the missing manual for ChatGPT. When are we going to start seeing that kind of stuff?
I honestly don't know if we will see it like in a commercialized aspect, as opposed to just finding things on YouTube or free content. Because I hope I'm wrong to some extent. I want content to be freely available, but I also don't want people's livelihoods to suffer. But the thing is, and this still happens with software that I create software, it can be updated and immediately obsolete. The book or the training that I created, and these programs, ChatGPT, Midjourney, they are either constantly evolving or they change so quickly that you can't, as soon as you create something, it's already old. There's no evergreen content with this. Is basically what I'm trying to say. You still have like older versions you can work with, with when you're working with things. But like I'm the person who's like, why would I use the old one when I have the new one? It's going to be better, unless there's a very specific reason that I would use an older version of an AI, the AI software that is available. But I don't know. I don't know if there ever will be anything that's other than just, all right, here's the new features of Midjourney 5.1 or whenever 6 comes out, or this is what's happening and this is what I figured out. And, because I'll search for things and I'll look things up and then I'll find something, I'll be like, oh, that's old. That's not going to work. Or it used to work and then it doesn't work, because they change things. They're very smart. All the AI companies, I only follow Midjourney, so I don't really know much about, I use Adobe stuff too. Like Firefly. I'm really excited for Firefly for some of their text capabilities and of course the generative fill, but they are, I know like Midjourney has discussed things like, making sure that certain words like politics, politicians, maybe I don't think they've actually come out and said this, but they have talked about it in their office hours they do it every Wednesday, mentioned how maybe they will suppress some of those words during certain times of the year, like the election time that's coming up in about a year. And so maybe there's other things that they're going to change. And so education on some things may not even be relevant or it doesn't work, and everybody wants things to work. I mean, like I have one of the things I love about Photoshop so much, and but there's so many different apps out there. But like let's say On One is a great example. I have products I've created 5-6 years ago, maybe a little bit more for On One, that are completely obsolete now because the software has just changed so much. And the same goes for some of my Luminar content. I have older books when Luminar kind of maybe just came out, and this is maybe only like 5 years ago, that I maybe had some content or some like a book or a training course. And it's already like, it's not evergreen. It's not going to, meaning it's not going to continue to sell because that software doesn't exist anymore. Whereas I have videos on YouTube for Photoshop that I did in like 2009, and they still apply. It's still applicable. Like there may be a better way to do it now, but the technique that I show, it's still valid. So you can't say the same thing for a lot of things that are transitioning and moving and changing and growing, especially with AI, because it's going to evolve so fast that we won't be able to keep up with it. I felt like I was behind the curve when I got into doing this like in January, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been out since August. Where was I? However long it'd been out. I felt like I was already behind. Whereas, I'll talk to some of my friends and I'll be like, they'll have no idea what I'm talking about. So it's like some people kind of live in different worlds with this. There might be people listening to your podcast who had no idea what Midjourney was until we started mentioning it, or maybe, I think everybody knows what ChatGPT is because that's just like, that made it to like a South Park episode. So that's totally everywhere. But I think there's some things that people are going to kind of like be discovering for the first time. And that's just how it works, like it kind of trickles here and it trickles. I think I actually heard about Midjourney from you just in a brief conversation. And I was like, well, I got to look this up. This is cool,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, let me look this up. But eventually it's all just going to be so mainstream, and it's just information is going to be out there. People are open and willing to share to some extent. I don't think people will openly share all of their prompts, like their exact string of prompts that they used for certain things that they make, because that is the creation of, that is what, I'm trying to think of how it would relate into with photography. It's like almost like personally proprietary information, like what we're using to create these things, because it's a different type of skill now with,
it's crazy. There's this, I just pulled this up real quick. Oh yeah, it just loaded. Prompts, right? So check this out. Yeah. So promptbase.com, if folks, if you haven't heard of this, promptbase.com is a marketplace for DALL-E, GPT, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and ChatGPT prompts where you can actually buy them and, if not, get a head start on what you want to create, or just use it wholesale out of the box. And they show you what you're going to get, and they tell you what the prompt is about, and it's $5 to get it. I mean, $5 for a string of text, right? Yeah. Why? But why not?
See, I think that's going to happen. It's kind of like how people have opened up Etsy shops with AI art. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's going to be one of those things where it's not going to be, this is creepy. Looking at these, so just to for those listening to this and not seeing it, there's like these prompts for these like baby versions of all these celebrities, and they're weird looking. I don't even know how to describe them. Old celebrities in infancy. Oh my gosh, that's even weirder. So, but people selling AI art, and it's just, and that's great. And it's one of those things where you have to jump in quick and do it, take your money and run, and then you're done. Yeah. The same thing might even be for what I'm doing with the KDP stuff. If enough people get into it, I feel like I feel like I do have an advantage because I do create good book covers. I have good content. Everything I do, I have a very high standard for myself with the quality of work that I create. And so I don't really let that suffer at all. And I don't let slip when I'm working on something, and it doesn't really matter what it is. So, that's where I feel like I'm going to thrive. But who knows? Yeah. Maybe in 5 years, I'll be pivoting to something else.
Yeah, and that's the magic of it. One thing you were talking about with the training bit and how fast things are moving these days, do you think there's, speaking of reinvention, is there a need to reinvent sort of the concept of this distance learning stuff, whereas the metaphor till kind of now has been, here's a topic, like the courses you create, here's a topic, I'm going to dive into it so you don't have to, I'm going to break it down into digestible bits, I'm going to create the assets and create videos and upload them, put a price on it, you can buy it, you get username, password, you can access and watch them at your leisure. That model, because AI is moving so fast and so aggressively, maybe it's time to rethink that model and go more into a learn as you go. I'm one exit ahead of you on the road type training, and I'm gonna keep you up to speed on how this stuff works. But maybe it's community based, or maybe it's some other metaphor that doesn't claim to be the Bible of this particular thing right now. It's more of get on this ride with us, and we're going to take it together. And by virtue of us being together and me being over here, I'm going to keep you up to speed on this technology so you don't have to. I don't know. You think there's value there, or maybe it's too much work? I don't know. It just seems like there needs to be a shakeup in there.
I think the community is like, so I know you have the TWiP community. I have my own community, and I've had to kind of like move it around a little bit, and it's on Discord right now. I have a pro community that I'm just, it's very inexpensive. I don't really charge very much for it. Basically what I do is twice a month, I do a live video stage thing on Discord, and I pick a topic, and the funny thing is next week's topic is talking about AI, and I'm going to show people how to use Midjourney, and I'm going to show people. I mean, it's photography based, but I showed in my last week that I did it every Thursday at 10 a.m. With my pro community on Discord. And you can find out if you are curious, if those of you listening, if you go to nicolez.com/community, I think that'll take you over to the community. The community is free, but it has like a pro extension, and that's where I do like these videos where I sit down, and I think I was showing something where I was like, oh yeah, and this is an AI photo. I just wanted to use that, and I mentioned something like that. And so somebody was like, can you show us how to do that? And I was like, I'll show you next time, because it's really cool and it's really fascinating. And I think that there's a lot that photographers can get out of it, with certain things, even if it's like a training thing, to like just get an idea of what a good photograph looks like. You can learn from that. I think also, and I don't know if this is something that would work, but I feel like the long form course and books, well, I don't know. I think books might always be a thing if it's content that's going to stick around, like certain types of software, or, like maybe if I did a book on like water drop photography or something, that's not something that, you could create those with AI, but if you really want to do it, then that's a different story. But one of the things I've considered adding as, something that I would maybe offer as an offering is one-on-one training, which I know a lot of people do already, but I've never really offered that before but I think that that's where there's going to be more value, where, instead of someone sitting down and figuring out how to do something from a book, pay me for an hour of my time, and I will sit here and show you exactly what you're trying to do and help you through it and hold your hand through it and make sure you can go away with it and send you the video afterwards, and you'll be good to go. And that's, I think it's like it's actual classroom training with a one-on-one instructor. And I feel like that might have some legs to it. I know I get a lot out of that when I, like after this conversation, or I did a couple hours before we started chatting, I had a Luminar Neo thing with my community, and I get very energized from having conversations and presenting and talking to people. So I really enjoy that, even though I would definitely say I'm much more introverted than I am extroverted. I really do enjoy social, connections with people. And so I think that the community aspect is something that I do think is going to thrive, because people still want and need those connections, and not, I think, I don't know if I'm the only one here, but you probably, you have more of like you're more in touch with the photography community than I am, because you have a podcast and you have a very active community, and you work for SmugMug, right? So you actually have that around you, whereas I'm just in my little tiny, rural community out here, and I don't really, get involved with it. But you might actually see if, how things are progressing with that. And, if that is actually something
it's interesting. There's a lot of, I'd say there's a lot of questions being asked all over the place about, what's next, and no one knows the answer. It feels very similar to the NFT kind of era, right? And how what is it? I don't understand why people are paying for that. How does this work?
Over yet? People stop trying to do that.
It's not over.
Or did
it's
AI just amplify it? Oh goodness,
it's not over. It's who knows?
We need to we need to do like a 5-year alarm, like put in your calendar 5 years from now to do another interview with Nicole, and we can, we'll be like, do you remember that thing we did 5 years ago?
Yes.
My house is an entire holodeck right now. I don't even have
we should totally do it. Yeah. Everyone's living in rented storage containers with their headsets, right? Like what was that? Like Ready Player One.
Ready Player One. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And maybe that's where it's, I hope that our society is not going that direction, but I think the technology would be amazing. But see, the thing is, like, there's a lot of ethical considerations with all of this, and how are these companies, I think that's part of the problem with these. I'm not like a Nostradamus or anything. I can't look into the future and know exactly what's going to happen, or if things are going have the right trajectory. But is it ethically moral to create some of the things that we're creating because of the consequences that could arise from them? Like people becoming recluses and never leaving their houses, or I can't, this is like a larger panel discussion. I feel like more people would have better insight onto this, like what are the dangers of technology, right? My gosh, the dangers of technology. And it's I'm not talking from like a commercial or a job loss type of aspect, but what are kids going to know? Like, kids are never going to, like, kids that are born now are never going to know a world without artificial intelligence as a daily part of their life. And that blows my mind. I mean, I'm blown away by what Photoshop can do. And it's, it's still in beta. It's still a growing AI platform. And just thinking about like what kids are going to think, it used to be, what are kids all kids are going to know are these smartphones, these, darn smartphones people have shoved in their faces all the time. And now it's like, they're going to look at what I did as, as a photographer, especially with like film, like people would look at, Michelangelo making a sculpture or painting on, the Sistine Chapel or whatever. Like that was so long ago. It was so long ago. You had to paint that. Well, I could just type 3 things in and get exactly what I want,
Yeah.
So
yeah. How did you guys survive? How did you survive when you had to actually develop film and then you had to print it after you developed it and then no one could see it? Like, how did that even work? What was the point of that? Yeah, no, we're absolutely going to see that.
I feel like I have the perspective to look at that and feel like it was so long ago. And I'm in my 40s. I'm not that old, but I mean, I say that, because I'm in my 40s, but I'm not, and I also don't consider myself like the kind of person to cling to tech, to cling to old things and feel like, oh, it's darn kids these days. It's like, no, you find ways to work with it. If you want to survive in the industry, you don't have to. If this isn't for you, then get a job at Walmart or whatever. Which
find another industry. There are many industries.
Yeah, find another industry. I mean, I joke, obviously. I joke that because I joke that I couldn't get a job in a traditional business because I've been doing this thing my whole life. This is all I know. And if things died for me, it'd be better off for me to just scrape by with what I can than to get a job that would pay me maybe about the same because I don't have any education.
You know what? I gotta call you on that. I think that is, because I had the same kind of demons, right? I think that is flawed thinking because you're discounting the experience that you've had for what, decade plus, plus your military in there, right? So, but you haven't, I would argue that what you've been doing is more valuable than what you'd have been doing at some college or working in even a corporation, because you've had to do all the bits, right? From the marketing to the copywriting to the design to the product creation to all the things. You are someone who knows all that stuff, not just someone who says they know that stuff, and you have a track record to back it up, right? So I think that is much more valuable. So I don't think if you decided at some point to jump back into corporate, I don't think it'd be a Control-Alt-Delete proposition. You'd take this mountain of what you've built behind you as you move in, and you go in with much more mass than you would as just somebody going in there with no experience and hasn't made a dime, but they got a college degree from this, or they worked at this corporation over there. You've like built stuff from the ground up and made it successful and bought houses and all this stuff from, your own sweat equity versus, so I wouldn't discount that. I wouldn't discount all the experience, because you basically have multiple MBAs in small business and online and content creation and server administration. Even you spinning up a Discord server, right? That's
right. This old lady over here, I've got my own Discord server.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just saying, don't discount it, because it's a real thing, right? I mean, and it's easy to say, I'm not doing this particular thing like I was doing it before anymore, so all that's gone, when really it's permanent. It's muscle that you've built up. So
there's probably a lot of people that have a similar, like me. Like, I mean, I joke, Jason and I joke that we both have PhDs. He actually has a fantastic job, and he's like one of those people who just is like rising up on his own. Like he's fantastic. But we both have PhDs because we both have public high school diplomas. That's nice. That's the extent of our on paper what we have. Obviously I have more experience than that, and I have some training. I've been to coding school. I've done, it was like a boot camp, but it was still like I learned a lot in that, and I couldn't just immediately get a job as a full stack developer. But man, I was picking things up like crazy. It was just how my brain works. I work really well with stuff like that. But it's all about, for anyone who is in that boat, if they are considering like going out into the real world. I've never been in the real world. I have never. Yeah. I went from high school to having some jobs in high school and a little bit out to the military to doing my own thing. So you joke like, oh, going back to corporate. I was like, I've never been in corporate. What's that like? I have no idea. No, but it's finding the right company. Yeah, right. It's finding the right company who understands that. Yeah, sure, I could probably find a great job in the industry, that would actually make me happy with what the compensation, everything that goes along with it. I probably could. Do I want to? Is another story. At this point in my life, no, I don't. I like my freedom and I like my days to be on the way I have them. But I'm not ruling that out as anything, that anything might be something in my future, because I think I would benefit. And I think there are a lot of people that have the same story. They've been a photographer and maybe they do have a degree. Maybe they went to school for photography or for business, even better. Right. And they're considering their next move, like what's next. But I'm doing my best to try to make it work for still working for myself because I enjoy it. I like being my own boss. I enjoy the flexibility and the freedom. I like to be able to just go grocery shopping in the middle of the day. I mean, it's stupid stuff like that, right? The things that I'm a very simple person, not simple, but I'm very happy. It doesn't take a lot. I don't need a lot to be happy. And I love the simple pleasures in life, and that's just kind of how I live my life right now, especially right now.
Which is good. Yeah. And just don't discount or overlook the mountain of experience and skills that you've built up over the years.
You are.
And well, it's the truth. And don't overlook you skip right over being a veteran. You're a, honorably discharged veteran from the United States military. I mean, that's gigantic as well.
And so are you. So are you.
I am.
Yeah, so we're in good company right here.
Air Force. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's all a big deal. Yeah. Cause part of before I did the sale of This Week in Photo to Smug Mug, I was wrestling with all that stuff. Like, what do I want to do next? And if I do, I want to continue TWiP, but how do I do this? And do I morph it? Do I change it to something else? Or, do I join a company? Do I sell it to a company? Do I just mothball it and go back to, go work at Apple or Adobe or something? So I'm, wrestling with all that stuff. And, I remember one day I just had the epiphany of I'm thinking, man, I've been out of the corporate game for too long. It's going to take me forever, when the reality is I've never left. Right. I'm just doing something different. I've been doing something different consistently for 12 years. Right. Which is, who could say that? Right. So, So
you've been successful at it too. You're not you're not the person who jumps from job to job to job because they burn bridges and they have to. You're good at everything you do, and you've made. I mean, look at you built something to where a large company actually wanted to purchase it from you, and that's amazing. That's a huge thing. That's like people's dreams. A lot of
that feels great too. It does. It feels very validating. Like as a photographer, it felt, and I don't think I've spoken publicly about this, but it felt validating from kind of quote growing up as a photographer and seeing brands like Flickr and Smug Mug, and Flickr back in the day was basically Instagram but with a bunch of other features, right?
Oh,
and I remember that, and it's now the brand that I built is now next to those brands. It was like that's just a weird kind of pinch yourself moment. It's
I felt
really,
the same
really
way when I spoke at Adobe Max for the first time last year, and that to me was like, I mean, I've done their virtual stuff before, but actually getting on stage and speaking at Adobe Max, I just was like, wow, this is like a feather in my cap right now. It felt really good. And I got up there and I remember doing my presentation and being like, I don't even feel nervous. It's like I finally went over that hump. I mean, it's not like I get on stage and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. But, everybody feels like butterflies.
Sure.
A lot of people, I should say,
100%.
feel butterflies and whenever you get on stage and do things. And it's like all of a sudden that switch just flipped off for me. And it's like I got over that hump of, I don't know what it was, like a good thing. I'm like, wow, I don't even feel nervous. I'm up here. I'm being myself. And I don't, it was great. And I was really happy. And but Adobe's like, they are the big company, the big corporate creative entity out there. And so it was kind of neat to have that. And of course, I've done a lot in my career. I'm not going to discount other things that I've done that are really big, but
Right.
that to me was kind of like, as an educator, like, this is cool. I'm actually
It's
speaking at
like being invited to do the cold open on Saturday Night Live or something. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
It's like, I can't believe it. They asked me.
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, Adobe is the Saturday Night Live of photography.
Right.
I want to switch gears and I'm going to wrap up. I mean, we're 18 minutes over.
I know what did you say? We were going to do this. Like, we're going to do like 40 minutes.
I know. I knew it was going to go like this, but this is riveting. I think this is helpful. Yeah, this is a little helpful. This will be helpful to a lot of people. But I want to talk about software, and I know you have this Luminar Neo handbook out, so I want to talk about that a little bit. Before we do that, though, I want to. You touched on this a little bit before, but I want to talk about the whole the shakeup, I guess, is maybe a way to put it, of the software industry, the photography software industry, now that generative AI is a thing now. It is a leading feature that Adobe has implemented, whereas something like sky replacement, yeah, you could figure out how to do that and put that feature in there. Now everybody has sky replacement, right? But generative AI is not that simple, right? It requires giant libraries of images, i.e. Adobe stock, to train these models in order to do the things that they do, which I'm guessing is not so accessible to a lot of these smaller companies, right? Like Luminar, On1, Serif, all these companies that make amazing software, but now there's this thing that might be out of reach for them. I don't know if it is. Maybe you can buy a library and build this feature, but I'm curious, as an educator, what's your thoughts on that? Is this like a checkmate from Adobe, and the other ones are going to be scrambling and looking for crumbs, or are we going to see Adobe lift all ships and this generative thing will be across the board?
So the software that I have the most familiarity with is obviously, Lightroom, Photoshop. That's where I've been using Lightroom since it was in beta. I've been using Photoshop since the late 90s. I mean, much more so, after I got out of the military. But, I still touched on it. I've used On1 a ton and Luminar. And, like a lot of people go to, I know before Luminar was around, a lot of people went to On1 when they were like, I don't want to pay subscription. I don't want to pay for monthly. I don't want to pay for Adobe. And this, I get it. People don't want that. And On1 is a fantastic alternative. You also now have Luminar, which is very similar. And Luminar has embraced AI. They have a lot of AI technology. And I think that On1 is also kind of going that direction as well. And I don't know what's exactly behind the scenes with that. I don't know like how AI things are, like what exactly it's doing, but that made sense at all. But, Luminar is really embracing AI. I think On1 is, and I think a lot of it, they say this is pre-generative fill, right? Out of necessity to continue, to make sure that they can keep up with these bigger programs. And this is like ages ago, I would see, On1's a great example, where I would see, let's say they, On1 had their thing, they'd come out, they rebranded it and they did a great job and it was fantastic software. And then people who were switching from like, say, Lightroom or Photoshop, they basically just wanted On1. This is from the customers that I would see comment about things. They wanted On1 to almost be a replica of Lightroom and Photoshop without having to pay for Lightroom and Photoshop. They want to make sure it has all the same features without the overhead, without the cost. I'm going to be really curious to see what happens because, generative fill is such a game changer. It is amazing, fantastic, huge game changer. I'm curious how Adobe is going to change, if they're going to change anything about their like pricing structure, if they're going to change anything about their offerings and what that's going to do. Because I think people who are not interested, there are definitely going to be a lot of people who just don't care about that. They want to take the photo they have and they just want to make it look better. And you can do that with every freaking app out there on the market,
Yeah.
And you just kind of choose the one that you like best, the one that fits your style best, the one, that maybe you have more faith in that company or whatever it is. You pick the one you like best and you go with it. But I do think I've had this conversation before with Jason. I was telling him, I was like, Adobe, now they have something that others don't have, because it's going to be really, really, really hard for a small company to build that much, just like you said, with Adobe stock being like their catalog of images to pull from. I think that, and especially even seeing, like I was saying, how the generative fill is fantastic, but it still has room for improvement, particularly with people and faces, which is definitely going to be the hardest thing to create. And then if you take that and you apply it to smaller companies, if Adobe is stuff is still in this stage, how much time is it going to take for a smaller company to try to build up to that same level?
Right.
I also wonder too, like with all these peripheral companies that sell camera gear, accessories, maybe not cameras so much. But I remember when we've probably had this conversation before, when phones and iPhones and are digital cameras dead or SLRs dead? Is it over for us? Is it over for SLRs? I know that there's been those conversations, and I don't think that cameras are, obviously they're still going to be around because people still paint, people still knit, people still sculpt, they do pottery, they do everything, but it's not as much of a business of creating it. It's more like, this is my hobby, or I'm a I do this as a grassroots type of artist, and you can find my stuff at the farmer's market. That's usually where those things are probably going to kind of dwindle down to. But how is this going? How is AI and the fact that people may no longer feel driven, people who want to create may no longer feel driven at an early age to go towards the avenue of photography because they can already get that satisfaction of creating by using AI art?
Good point.
So is it just going to, I don't think people I'm not going to sell all my camera gear and just start using Midjourney. No way. I love to create photos, and I will always create photos. I can see myself like this year, my photography collection is really low. If you look at how much I photographed last year compared to this year, really, really low, just because took a little break from it. Just in general, I just kind of needed a breather, was doing some other things, but I'm not getting rid of my gear. I want to keep it. I'll still add to it. But is that, people like me or people that are younger, people in their teens and 20s, are they going to go and buy, a $5,000 gear kit and need the biggest lens? And are they going to need that? Probably not. That I think is going to start slowing down. It's still going to exist. It's just going to be smaller, which is sad because when I use Fujifilm cameras, and it was really fun to see the beginning of mirrorless and how Fujifilm really, took the reins on that. And I know that there's other companies that have done really well with it. Of course, I've been focused on Fujifilm because that's what I use, and creating things out of necessity because that's what people wanted. And that's, usually how, how things are created, out of necessity. We make things out of necessity. Maybe it's just to make money because someone else needs it, but it's still out of necessity. And if people aren't asking for it anymore, then it's, or if they make it and no one's buying it, then they're going to start reassessing and going, well, no one's going to buy this. Why would I make it? Let's go a different direction, So I think that we're going to start to see, it might take years for that part because the hardware, it takes a little bit longer to kind of see a change with that. But I think we're going to start to see a change with that as well. With cameras, lenses, camera bags even. who knows where this is going to go? And this is why in 5 years we have our conversation. We can go, let's see how many things we were right about.
I think it's going to be, we'll probably be wrong about everything, to be honest with you. And it'll just go in this unexpected direction, which is fine. It's all part of the adventure. It's interesting what you say about how AI or these generative type technologies might affect even hardware sales. I hadn't considered that but you're right, because on the one hand, it depends on the motivation of the photographer, I guess. So, for example, if the photographer's motivation is, they find their happy place when they grab their camera bag with their long, 400 mil whatever lens, and they head out into Death Valley and they do shots of the full moon out there with silhouettes of Joshua trees, and that is their just going out there and doing that is where they find value. The photograph is like the side effect, of the actual actions of it. So those people not affected. They're going to continue to do that forever. Their gear may be cheaper, but they're going to continue. They're going to continue to do that. But then there's the people that are like, you know what? I need a photo of a Joshua tree in a cracked desert floor shot with a full moon in back of it, and they can make it while they're sitting in line at the, waiting their turn at the dentist. They can go ahead and make that real quick, right? So on the one hand, yeah, the people that can make it like that, if the alternative to doing it via prompt was to go buy all the gear and do the shot, all that money's gone now in a flash. Boom. Because now I can just, repeat that over any other scenario where to do it one way would have required buying stuff. To do it another way, it requires a prompt. Those places, it's physics, right? Water seeks the path of least resistance always. So that's going to happen. Those industries will be affected. But again, I think it depends on the end goal of the photographer. Is it for if they're an amateur, i.e., or a pure amateur? The word amateur means for the love of something, right? So if they're doing this thing for the love of doing it versus for the end result, then they're not going to be affected by anything AI related. It will enhance what they're doing because now they can fine tune it. But the people that are doing it professionally, i.e. they have to get the job done by a certain time for a client who's expecting it, blah, 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 different story completely. So I don't know. Exciting.
I find myself almost in both categories there because I'm a professional photographer in the fact that I make money through my photography and through my, through teaching photography and, but I do it because I love it, but I don't have to create certain types of photos to actually, I don't have to, I'm going to go on a hike to create photos for a client. It's not like that. But I have found, and now that, I'm not with my boyfriend's not a photographer and he's really good at photography, but he's not like a photographer, so I have found that a better balance, I think, with not feeling like everything I do has to end up with an amazing photograph. So I've given myself like some leeway with that. Whereas in the past it was like, well, I wouldn't like just not do something because I wouldn't get a good photograph, but it might be less inclined to want to do something, or I might just make sure I do it, like on a hike when the weather's perfect versus, and when I say perfect, I mean like overcast and maybe a little rainy because it's, the photos, the photos I want to get might require that. Whereas if it's a perfectly sunny day, I'm like, I don't want to go hiking. Why would I want to go hiking? The sun's going to be crap. I can't even get photos. But now I probably would, unless it was like really hot or something. It wasn't uncomfortable. I'll be like, no, if it sun's out, it's beautiful. I see things differently now that I've kind of like found that better balance with, I guess, life and photography. And I love photography. I don't want people to think that I'm just getting away from, I'm not getting away from photography. I'm just kind of being like better to myself and not being so hard on myself about the things I'm creating. And it's not like AI is taking over and it's like, well, I didn't get a photo on a hike, so I'll just create it with AI. It's not like that, it's just, I don't feel like I have to. I don't feel like I have to take a picture every time. And sometimes I just use my phone now because I love the act of creating. I love to create things. I'm learning now how much I love to watch plants grow. Like we planted 200 feet of sunflowers and they're just starting to turn into tiny little, sprouts out of the ground. And we did this a couple of years ago and it was this glorious wall of sunflowers on my property. And I'm just like, things like that. I'm creating life for the plant, but, we're watching chickens and ducks grow. And, we're going to have a flock in our backyard pretty soon. It's like, it's a different, I'm just learning a lot more about myself. I think as things change, I'm changing with it and I'm allowing myself to change. Right. I'm allowing myself to actually change with everything that's going on around me. So it's a really good feeling. I feel like I'm in the best place I've been, and I've always been happy. I've never had any any hard times, I should say. But I feel like I'm in the best place emotionally that I've probably ever been in my life. And it's just a really good feeling. I know that's kind of like a weird turn to take this, but it is kind of related because there's so much that's changing in our industry. And I've lived in this industry for so many years. I'm going on like 15 plus years of my life doing this. And that's, ever since I got out of the military, this has been my life, is doing photography and now teaching photography and seeing it like shift and change. Like I said, there's almost a mourning process that goes with it. And, I'll have days where I feel a little bit down because I can see things like evolving in a direction that I wasn't expecting so quickly. I did expect this to happen at some point, not necessarily with AI, but I did expect, things to slow down. But now I'm actually like, I feel like as, one thing changes, another thing changes, and they're both going in good direction. So it's just a really good feeling to kind of go through this.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. And it's everything's always in motion, right? So,
yeah, right.
we're getting older. You're changing the way we think about things for whatever reasons. Circumstances change, which influence you. The economy, everything. And then of course technology on top of all that. So everything is in kind of a constant state of swirling around in motion. I think it's how we adapt and deal with that swirl is what separates the people that are successful from the people that complain about technology, and
yep.
and like George Carlin, was it George Carlin or somebody said, don't spit in the wind. I feel like that's spitting into the wind is complaining about this freight train of technology that's coming at you. So yeah, no, you know what? I want to, as we end this, I want to talk about that Luminar handbook that you have out.
Yeah.
I want to bring that up. And tell me about that. Speaking of companies that are going to be impacted by what Adobe's doing with generative stuff.
Yeah.
What's up with this? And I'll put the, I know you have a coupon code for this. I'll put that on in post.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you're seeing this overlay of text now, right?
Yeah.
I like I said, I've said previously, I love creating books, and so this was, and I've done similar books in the past, like software books and learning how to use software, and so I was like, it's about time I do something on Luminar Neo. So I sat down over the last couple months and I put this book together. It's a full, kind of a, I don't want to call it a manual because that makes it sound awful, but it's a very beautifully illustrated, I guess, or lots of colorful pictures. It shows all the tools you can use and how they work. It walks through the catalog creation process. It's just the kind of ultimate kind of how-to book for Luminar Neo. As far as I know, it's one of the few, there are very few books out there. There's probably a lot of video training, but I have a book. This is an ebook right now. It's on my website. You can use the coupon code TWiP, and that will give you 20% off. It's also going to be a print book at some point too. I need to make a few updates to it before it gets to that point. But when the time comes, I'm sure that Frederick will probably be able to share that information as well.
Yep.
So that's my big product that I launched just this last week. So check it out on my website and let me know what you think.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely. And that coupon code was TWiP, right? TWiP.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
And how much off do you get off of it?
20%. And actually, that code will be good for anything in my store. I have a lot of presets, textures, overlays. So, peruse the store and.
Oh, you got all kinds of stuff in here. Look at this.
Oh yeah. This is, like I said, I love to create things, and a lot of things like I just will kind of like the dirty film thing was I made that because I was scanning some old pictures, and there was like some film that was actually just like there wasn't any picture on it. It was just like this really scratchy old film. So I was like, oh, that might be kind of a neat, overlay. So I kind of packaged it together and created some presets to go with it.
Very cool.
So. Yeah.
Very cool. Good job. See, you are always busy. Yeah. I love it. Always see the creator. You're the content creator. Yeah. Oh, you call yourself the what is it? Discontent? Is it discontent? or malcontent, discontent. When you're not at rest is discontent.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying. I know the phrase, but I don't know which one it is.
Yeah. I'm thinking real time. I'm doing marketing here, so the discontent creator. I know. All right, well, cool. So if folks want to connect with you, check out these products there at Nicole Z. Everything's at NicoleZ.com, right?
NicoleZ.com. If you want to check out my activity books, that's figgydesigns.com. So FIGGY. I don't think I have the sites linked together, so you'd have to go to them. But you could Google Figgy Designs, and it probably would come up. So it's a fairly new website. Yeah,
I'll link to it from the description in the blog post and in the YouTube video. So so if you're watching this on YouTube, just look down in the description and there it is, Figgy Designs. Very cool. This is good. We got to do this again because there's so much more to talk about. I had on my list to bring up to you like your thoughts on mobile and iOS or Android photography and where that world is going, and is it ready for prime time yet? Especially now considering gigapixel type AI enlargers and Adobe with the generative stuff, so you can do all kinds of stuff to the final image. Do we still need beautiful big Fujis and Lumix and Nikons and Canons and Sonys and all that stuff? So
that would be a good conversation because I honestly haven't updated. I still have a Fujifilm X-T3. I think they're on X-T5 now. So maybe I am being affected by what I was talking about earlier. I intentionally didn't upgrade to the X-T4 because the X-T3 just had some features and things, and I didn't want to switch all my batteries over, little things like that. And I was like, I'll probably go to the next one, the X-T5. And then it comes around and I'm just like, no, I don't really feel FOMO. I'm happy with my camera. It still works. It's great. The megapixel wars are over, right? We're not like, they've kind of gotten to that point where, I feel like there's been conversations in the past where I feel like it was Alex Lindsay who said something like 10 megapixels is enough or something like that. And maybe I'm probably misquoting him, but I vaguely remember something in my head where it's like, how big is it going to get? Whoever said it, how big is it going to get? Are we there?
Yeah.
Is it maxed out?
I think they're iterating on different things. Yeah, sensor size. Yeah, I think that race ended long ago. I think the race, at least on the Nikon side, has shifted to catching up to Sony and other brands when it comes to focusing and eye tracking and keeping people in the frame or focusing on the closest eye of that eagle flying a mile away. Those sorts of refinements I think is where they are versus hey, now we're a 500 megapixel camera, because at a certain point it becomes an inconvenience and not a feature, because now I got to buy bigger cards, I got to store all that data, and everything's slower because of it, so my camera's 24. I'm on a Nikon Z6 II. It's 24 megapixels, and I'm more than happy. They make a Z7 with 40 some odd megapixels. I don't feel like I need it. I like what I have. So so we're in the same boat.
We'll probably start seeing, as just a really quick thing, we'll probably start seeing more AI in cameras.
Oh, 100%.
Unless they just start putting it into phones, and skip.
They got so much work to do on cameras. I'm sorry, big camera manufacturers, but you guys, like, where is our app store? Right? Why don't cameras, they have a screen on them and input mechanism. Why don't I have an app store in there? Put a faster chip. Why is there no cellular modem inside of my camera when I have it in my phone and every other device I have? How come I can't have it in my camera so I can shoot directly to the cloud or to home or other people or whatever? It's like fundamental stuff like that. I think those omissions, which seem fairly obvious, those omissions are what would lead someone with deep pockets to disrupt that space. Because then if you come in with an ecosystem and an app store and shoot to cloud built in and all these next generation things that people didn't realize they needed, but now they see it, they can't live without it. boom, here you go. Price it correctly. And, now the other ones are going to be playing catch up when they could be leading right now. So
I'm sure that there's been a lot of meetings behind the scenes that we don't know about. And there's probably stuff already in the works, because if companies who can afford it and who can actually do it are ignoring AI, then they are going to die. That's my, if it fits with their company, if they're ignoring it, and then, unless they're going to go in a direction like Polaroid, where Polaroid is just, we're Polaroid, and we're going to mostly just create Polaroid, and you can still buy the film, and you can still, that's different.
Silicon Valley is littered with the carcasses of companies that didn't think correctly. Yeah, I mean, it's a zombie graveyard of companies that didn't execute correctly.
Sounds like a great prompt for Midjourney, by the way.
Zombie graveyard of Silicon Valley companies that died. Yeah, it's totally true. Because you look at, like, even in our industry, or look at tech, AOL. Right, AOL had they had the crown, right? They were sitting on the Game of Thrones, and then they failed to execute and relied on dial-up and didn't do anything. Then in came Yahoo, and then here's Yahoo sitting on the Game of Thrones throne there, and then along comes Google, right? Supplants them. It happens over and over again. In our space, Kodak. What about Kodak? Mm-hmm. Kodak owned the photography space. They could have been everything. They could have had a whole division that was an Instagram and another one that was Adobe. And, they could have done all that, but they didn't. They didn't listen to the tea leaves and act accordingly. It was hubris and lack of vision that killed these companies. So, Let's hope it doesn't happen again. I'm hoping that these camera manufacturers do something, because I feel it. I live in Silicon Valley. I've been here forever, and I feel like I have entrepreneur kind of DNA, if not by osmosis from being here. But it feels like the photography industry, aside from all this AI stuff, if you put that in there, it's obvious, but the hardware space is ripe for a huge disruption. Disruption. I feel it. Yeah, I feel it. There's a lot of money there, and why not? Let's hope Elon doesn't get in the game.
Oh, no.
The new Tesla camera.
Yeah, it's one of those things where things are just moving so fast. It's fun and it's scary at the same time to see, and you kind of just have to decide, like, which wave do you want to ride? Do you want to get in the tide, the little like cool little pool over here that's just going to kind of hover, or do you want to like get on the the 100-foot crazy wave off of North Island or North Beach in Honolulu? So
that's right. Yeah, you got to pick your poison. And go for it. It's like a friend and I were talking yesterday about the Vision, the Apple glasses. And, the whole idea of the Apple walled garden came up. You got this Apple ecosystem and you're trapped in, iMessages with the blue bubbles that got you there. And, you got your photos are automatically getting uploaded over here, and it's easy to share them to your Apple TV. By the way, your music is everywhere and on your watch. And, they got you, right? You're locked in. But then my argument to that is, but it's great, I'm able to get my job done easier, with more fun, and the hardware is great. It works. So what's the problem of living? Maybe I'm just, I got Stockholm syndrome or something, but it feels like, what's the problem? It's a walled garden, but it's a really nice garden. It's huge, right? And all my friends are here. So, I don't know. Yeah, change is inevitable. Okay, so let's wrap up, because we
all right. We can just keep talking.
We totally good. Okay, so folks, make sure you check out NicoleZ.com, NicoleSY.com for the photography stuff. Figgy Designs, that's at FiggyDesigns.com for the books that you're working on. I'm gonna check out a couple of those, because I want to check them out, because I want to see how you did it and kind of get a feel. Yeah, I just want to dive into it.
If you have any requests, I almost want to tell people, like, hey, do you have a coloring book request? I'll make it for you.
Cats.
Just buy it,
Anything
you know?
cats related.
Oh,
It's got to be cats.
I
Yeah.
have a really cute dog one, actually. I don't have any cats yet. I'm sorry. And
Oh, we
nobody
need
heard
some
our
cats.
pre-conversation. We were joking about cats and how, Frederick has cats and
Yes.
I
Two.
have dogs and ducks
Yes.
and chickens. I have one cat. Okay. I have one cat.
Okay.
I
There
never
you
see
go.
it, though, because it hides. But it's,
Yeah,
it's
'cause
kind
it's
of like
smart.
the low end of the totem pole in the house.
Aw, come on. They're the
Not
kings and
because
queens.
it puts itself there. She has claws and everything, and she could defend herself, but she's just afraid of the dogs. It's kind of sad, actually. We give her lots of love. We bring her down. She gets lots of love.
All right, we'll leave her. We'll leave it right there. But we'll leave you with this moment of zen. If you could see this, right? If I could find her, where is she at? Is she down there somewhere?
Yeah. Is your cat there?
My cat is like somewhere in here. Sorry, people that are watching this.
You got to do the. That's the international sign for come over here, cat.
Wait, check this out. Look.
Moment of zen.
She's dead
great.
to the world right there. All right, Nicole, thank you so much for doing this.
This is
we got to do it again. Yeah, we'll do it again.
Absolutely. Not in 5
by the
years.
way,
Let's make sure we put a few in there.
No, I'm bringing the roundtable format for TWiP back. So,
oh my god.
Yeah. Yes. So guess who's going to be on there? You.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. It's going to be much
awesome.
Yeah. The one-on-one interviews are not going away. They'll probably be a little bit less frequent, but the weekly one-on-ones is going to be where the party's at for the foreseeable future. So.
I'm excited. Just let me know and I'll be there.
I will. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for everything. And I'll be in touch when this thing is going to publish.
Sounds great.
All right. Take care.
This is TWiP.